Yes, so for Matthew, if we start with you, you've got about 10 minutes to just talk about kind of all things housing, what the party's doing nationally.
All things housing. Well, I'll touch on London a bit, but I'll definitely put it in a national context. And before I do, just thanks to you for coming out on a rainy morning to talk about housing. It is crucial, and it's crucial. I always say this to people who query why it wasn't one of the 5 missions. It is absolutely crucial to, I would argue, at least 4, if not all of the missions. Without planning reform, we can't do net zero. We can't improve public health without good housing and planning. We certainly can't open opportunities for all, and we can't hit our economic growth targets without reforming these areas. So it is central and underpins lots of the missions that we have committed to in government. I see lots of expertise in the room, but I'll do a bit of the problem analysis because I think it is kind of important to set the scene. We have, as you know, an acute and intensifying housing crisis. I know crisis is bandied around left, right and centre. This is absolutely a crisis. In many parts of the country, it has become an emergency, and that is the case in my constituency in South East London. I'm sure it's the same for Miata down in different parts of South London, but with many of the same problems. But it has become a real emergency. And I would go so far as to say, and any local authority representative in the room will hopefully agree with me, I think it's become almost existential in terms of the problems it's causing for local government. And lots of the issues we're seeing with Section 114 notices and financial pressures, particularly as a result of temporary accommodation costs, are pushing lots and lots of local authorities to the brink. So we've got to get a grip on it. I see the consequences of the crisis every day in my postbag. Absolutely horrific cases. You'll all know, not only in terms of standards, damp and mould, but particularly TA, where I've got kids now being sent into North Kent, far-flung places in North Kent, not just Dartford, struggling to keep footholds in school.
So it's a wide conference.
In a way that is directly affecting their life chances, their ability to flourish. So again, we've got no choice but to grasp the crisis. When I came into this role 2 years ago, I was already convinced as a constituency MP that the system was a mess, but it absolutely brought home to me, having shadowed many, many housing ministers over the time, the housing and planning system is an abject mess, And I think we can go through many of the facets of that. I'd name a couple. First, we have obviously a chronic lack of genuinely affordable social rented housing in the country. As a direct result of that, we've got 1.2 million people on housing waiting lists. We've got lots of families in inadequate, overcrowded private rented sector housing that shouldn't be there. And we've got, as I said, a TA explosion, if you like. We've surpassed 100,000 people in TA, huge costs both to the state and to local authorities. And that is a direct result of that. And it's not only blighting lives in that sense, it's costing the state billions, absolutely billions. The outrun on housing benefit this year is 29.5 billion. It's projected to rise to 34 billion by 27-28. It's on an unsustainable trajectory, and that alone should be convincing the government to do more in the way of social housing. The affordability crisis more generally across the country is not only hampering life chances, it is causing economic volatility. It's constraining growth and productivity. Our towns and cities can't grow in the way they need to, and I include London in that. We've got a dysfunctional land market, and we've got a speculative house builder model that prioritises, in lots of cases, cutting costs in order to generate short-term returns, rather than creating long-term value from building high-quality places and good development. And we've got to change the dynamics of that system. And we have a planning system, as I said, that after a decade of tinkering, and there's been lots of tinkering, but it's been largely inept, is failing on nearly all fronts. I would argue. It's failing to meet the housing, amenity and infrastructure needs of most local places. It's failing to ensure that we're responding as a country to other national challenges. I mentioned net zero, but the biodiversity crisis is another one. Housing's got a huge role to play. It's not doing all of it that it can. And it's failing to sustain what little public trust and confidence it enjoys as a system, planning system in particular. You'll all know that the government have got a target of 300,000 homes a year. They have never once come close to achieving it, despite liberalising permitted development rights, for example, in a very harmful way. It's added about 90,000 units over the period, but a great cost, and we'll be unpicking that cost over time as a society. We have put together, as you've hopefully seen at conference, a bold but pragmatic, achievable, we're absolutely confident it's achievable, plan to boost supply But in boosting supply, to have a focus on high quality places, good placemaking, and good communities. So it's not just supply at all costs, but it will be a boost in supply, and we've given that figure of 1.5 million homes over the course of the Parliament. Now, turning to London, I think London, in the face of those headwinds, has come out pretty well, all told, partly because it's got the planning powers that other parts of the country doesn't have. In the London plan, there'll be criticism of the London plan and how the GL operates, but the London plan makes the rest of the country look like the Wild West, trust me, in terms of planning powers. And despite policy hurdles, and we'll come on to talk about second staircase and other issues, overall supply in London has been broadly sustained. So the latest data up to March 2022 showed that London increased its housing stock by 8% compared to 6% for the rest of the country. It's not ideal, we don't want to go further, but it's not a bad record on overall supply. And when it comes to council housing in particular, they doubled the rate that the rest of the country is producing. So we are doing well on council housing. But our central argument, and I know there'll be unanimous agreement on this in the room, is with a Labour government stood behind a Labour mayor, we could be doing a whole lot more, and we plan to. And I just, before I kind of finish and pass over to Netta, touch on two areas where I think we can make a very quick and immediate difference. The first is policy certainty and stability. Sounds very boring. It's incredibly important when I talk to registered social housing providers, others in the sector, who just say to me, we have been messed around with change after change, year after year. We've had 4 revisions of the National Planning Policy Framework since 2019. And no one really knows what to do or whether they should even bother planning for the long term. Why update your local plan if the metrics on which it's based are going to change, if the NPPF is going to be revised again? So I think that certainty and stability is a really important point. It's a real failing of the government. And nothing, I think, in London exemplifies that better than the mess around second staircase. We still don't have clarity around transitional provisions on the second staircase. GLA's estimates is that it's held up 34,000 homes approximately. And that's directly something the government is responsible for. Michael Gove could have prioritised, could have given London a greater certainty to date. So we will come in, make changes to the housing and planning system, but we're going to do them in an integrated way. We're going to go with the grain of geography. We're not going to tip the whole system up. We're going to make a series of very targeted tweaks that we think will get the system working, gear things up, but in a way that gives people in the sector, people providing housing, greater certainty over the course of the Parliament that things aren't going to shift continually. And I think that we will get an improvement in results as a result of that. Second, social rented housing. Absolute priority for me, and I only we'll come on to talk about it in more detail. It's been an absolute priority for me coming into this job that we put in place plans to significantly boost the number of social rented homes we are building as a country. You all know the government's record, net loss of 14,000 social homes a year. They crowed last week about a slight uptick, very slight uptick in numbers. I think just, what was it, just under 8,000, I think. Absolute meager numbers in the great scheme of things when we look at what we need. And their performance over the whole period has been particularly bad. I go back to the fact, you remember lots of the changes. I would say, and I do so openly, that I think successive Tory housing ministers have engineered the decline of social housing very deliberately by slashing the affordable homes grant funding, by increasing the discounts on right to buy, all manner of number of tweaks. Now Gove has come in and he's making slightly different noises. They've made a number of minor tweaks around, right to buy receipts and other things, all helpful for what they are. They're very small beer, and they're not going to lead to the increase in numbers that we need. So we're going to make a number of changes when it comes to social housing rent. One which ties into directly the point I've just made, great certainty and stability. Now, London didn't get its affordable homes programme grants signed off until July of this year. That is no way in which to treat our capital city and its ability to plan long-term for genuinely affordable housing need. We need great certainty in this area like others. We need far greater flexibility about how we use the Affordable Homes Programme grant. It is absolutely unconscionable that given the demand we face out there and the crisis that people are in, that the government are handing back money. However they want to badge it, reprofiling, recycling, whatever, they're handing back money to the Treasury that they could have got out the door if they'd have flexed the rules, and we think there needs to be those flexibility around those. And then lastly, we need to ensure it's not just numbers when it comes to affordable, it's the right type of affordable need for the right type of areas. And for me, that means shifting the overwhelming majority of grant funding in the government's envelope towards social rented homes. And we haven't put a number on it, but we've said the overwhelming majority. I'm inclined to get back to the sort of rates we had when John Healey was housing minister, sort of 80-20, if you like. That's where I think it needs to go, and London would directly benefit from that. Because all of the other parts of this housing and planning system more widely that aren't working, the PRS, for example, they're directly affected by the number of social rented homes. We need many more on stream very early. And the commitment we've made, we've not put a number on it yet. We may get to a number, an affordable housing number, but we want to go net positive on social housing supply within the first year. So a direct, real switch that people should feel. So those are the Labour offers. Hopefully, as part of a much wider policy programme. I'm happy to answer any questions, but at that point, I'll hand over to Miatta.
Thank you.